So here's a small business submission. This is a contractor under the name The Best Plumbing LLC. So I'm going to walk you through this account. I'll let you know how I approached it, how I underwrote it as well. Here, so as I mentioned, we have the name insured, Best Plumbing LLC. The entity is not listed, but based off of the name, you can tell it's an LLC. So with that in mind, they have two managing members that have to be excluded from coverage. So it's, as I mentioned, it's very important to determine the entity type. So you know how many owners or managing members need to be excluded from coverage, and then you get those exclusion forms from the carrier prior to binding. And I say prior because the carrier will not backdate owner exclusions. So that's very important. And I only mention that because, for example, a sole proprietor versus a corporation, they have a different set of rules. So you should confirm with your insured prior to submitting. And then we have one location, which is in Arizona. As I mentioned, make sure to list all locations. This being a contractor, they may have employees going to job sites, but they are not permanently going to those job sites for the entire year, 5 days a week. So only the business location needs to be listed. But for example, let's say you have a maintenance employee that is going to a location every day, 5 days a week, then you'll want to add that location to the policy in case an injury occurs. Employee count, we have 6 full-time, 1 part-time. This business is not experience rated. That is because the experience modification, it's controlled by the Workers' Comp Rating Bureau. So they administrate this program and have a minimum criteria that drives the mod. So this business in particular, they don't meet the criteria, but maybe someday as their company grows, they will. And then their payroll has 2 class codes. So 5183 is the standard plumbing, and then 8810 is your clerical office classification. So they have payroll in both, and then you can see the premium is, mid 8,620. So this is a new venture, which is acceptable for all our carriers. Most do require industry experience, so that's why I put this here, 10 years of industry experience. Also, the underwriter may ask, some questions. Do they work below ground? Do they go over 15 feet? Do they work on commercial or residential, and what is the percentage? One common question is, do they hire subcontractors, and typically, what is the percentage of that? So these are just some typical questions that might get asked, but this is something you'll want to gather when you do your initial, meet and greet with your insured. And then now we're going to move on to the larger business submission. Okay, so here we have name insured under Olive Canyon Estates HOA. This risk has 2 locations in Pasadena, which location should be taken into consideration because the rate per class code can fluctuate depending on the territory of where the business is located. Los Angeles, for example, unfortunately is a higher rated territory. So here they have 16 employees, which is a large amount. And then their experience mod is at 124, which, I've seen much higher, but we can conclude that maybe they're being penalized from claims activity. But this also means that because it's over that 100%, they're going to have a 24% debit on their policy or on their quote. So for underwriting review, obviously I would need loss history. For current value loss history, at least for the last 3 years. And then here they only have 1 classification, which is a typical HOA, class code 9066. And then their premium is around $42,000. So this is a HOA, as I mentioned. They've had 9 years of insurance coverage since 2012. And then if we go to the next slide, I'll cover more details on this risk. Okay. So I know Anae mentioned this earlier, but if you want to play in the big arena, you have to be on your game. Know the details of the risk. It will create a much smoother underwriting process, and in return, you'll receive a quote in a timely manner. So upon my review, I had to ensure we had all the proper documentation in order for me to quote the risk. So loss history was a priority due to the experience mod. I found out they had 9 claims within the last 5 years, and all were closed, which is something the underwriter will look for. If you have a huge claim that is still open, that is going to look unfavorable to an underwriter. And then they have a total incurred loss of $154,941. So also they've been with 2 carriers in the past, so I might ask the question, why are they marketing to another carrier? Were they non-renewed due to their claims activity, or is it just premium driven? Are they looking for a lower premium? So that's something important to include on the application just to provide more information. And then on a larger submission like this, I just put my requirements. I would require loss history, a supplemental application, an XMOD worksheet if the underwriter asks, and then also, of course, a completed accord application. When you run into these larger submissions with a lot of claims, it would be helpful also to have a conversation with the insured and also include it on the application. Why are these claims occurring? Has the insured put any safety measures into place since the claims have happened? The carrier is most likely going to come back and ask that question anyway, so just gather the information. And then if you have a good submission, meaning complete submission, then we will submit to our markets right away. And most larger accounts like this, they most likely would be referred to underwriting management for review. So it's important just to have all the correct information straight up on the front side so that we don't have to keep going back to the underwriter for payroll changes or information that's missing. And then we do hold great relationships with our carriers. We're able to negotiate with our underwriters and getting a good competitive premium. So overall result, we were able to quote within 4 days, and then which is very good, especially because it's a large account, and then having everything we bound within 5.